Three viral prison stories, prison reports, and even some video footage that are really making headlines right now. I'm going to go ahead and cover all three of them briefly, but mainly and mostly give you a little behind the scenes insight into each one of these. One of them is due to a request that I keep seeing in the comments. That will be what we're going to cover first. That'll be the report of the inmate who was eaten alive by bed bugs in prison. Number two, it's going to be about a recent report of an inmate who dug a tunnel through a shower into another inmate's cell and went in there and stabbed him. And then third, we're going to talk about this viral video that's making its way around social media of inmates celebrating Easter by one inmate placing Easter eggs all around the prison dorm, which are really just bags filled with contraband, and letting the inmates run wild and find and hunt the Easter eggs. So, number one, the bed bug story. September 13th, 2022, at the Fulton County Jail in Atlanta, 35-year-old LaShawn Thompson was in there for a misdemeanor charge. On September 13th, he was discovered dead inside of his cell due to being eaten basically alive by bed bugs. There was a severe bed bug infestation. They found cuts and scars on his skin, reportedly from picking his skin, probably because of these bed bugs. And they would later say the cell was so filthy that investigators wore a hazmat suit upon entering that cell. So the main questions that I'm getting in these comments from you all about that are along the lines of how could this happen? You know, wouldn't someone notice? How could they let it get so bad? Why didn't they do anything about this? How possible or common is a situation like that? Maybe not someone being eaten alive, but just dealing with bed bugs, you know, stuff like that. So I'll say this. I'm not surprised at all that there was a bed bug infestation. I think that's very common. I think it's just as common probably as spiders. I mean, let me just list through, in my 10 years, what all I've seen in the prisons I've been at. I have definitely seen bed bugs. I have seen spiders. You know, random, I don't know what kind of spiders they were, but I have also seen black widows. I've also seen rats, mice. You know, I was living in my cell with a mouse for probably 2 months. And I mean, I couldn't catch it. I didn't want to catch it. I was kind of scared of it. I don't like mice and stuff. But anyways, you know, I was in there with a mouse, and who knows what it was carrying, if it had bit me, what it could have passed on to me. At one point in my time, I've even seen a snake. Not in my cell, but in another cell. I've seen a bird in the cell block. You know, sometimes a window gets busted out, or an inmate just, you know, who goes crazy and busts out a window, you know, whatever. But a bird has flown in, and there's a bird flying around. You know, I mean, I've seen all types of stuff. So, not surprised that there was bed bugs in there. Do they care? Like the staff, do they care? I would say no, they don't really care any more than they care about, you know, spiders and critters. And I mean, there's earwigs. You know, inmates used to sleep with the little foam earbuds. What are they called? Earplugs in their ears at night, just because of these earwigs that were in the cell that get in your ear. I mean, they're not going to, you know, bring you out of the cell because of that. That's probably happening in everyone's cell in every prison. That's just the conditions of these places. Now, let's just say, because I do think it's possible that the report of bed bugs in particular may be taken a bit more seriously, and may be a bit more important to the staff if they become aware of it, than just your spiders and your bugs, your roaches and stuff. Because, you know, just like lice, you know, they actually take pretty good care. That's apparently why they shave your head when you come into prison, where I'm from, things like that. I think they care more about any type of bugs or insects that could like result in a widespread situation, and probably more so because it could pass and spread to the staff, and the staff doesn't want it. But as far as the inmates dealing with it, I just don't think they care, you know. But let's just assume that they will take a report of bed bugs much more serious than, hey, there's a big hairy spider in my cell. You gotta do something, because they're not. The reason why it may not be brought to their attention to where they would be able to do something about it is they're most likely going to get that cell quarantined. And those inmates will be taken out of that cell and probably placed in another cell. And it's not uncommon for that cell to not be within that same cell block. You may have to move them to solitary, just, you know, even though they're not in trouble, just because we don't have any more beds open. We don't have any more open cells. We're full. I mean, there's a lot of overcrowding in prisons and jails right now. I mean, we're full. We only got one place to put you. It's on solitary. And maybe they don't want to go there. Or maybe it's in a whole nother cell block, you know. But the reason they wouldn't want to do that is, I've covered this kind of aspect of prison in other videos too. Your whole world is probably in that cell block. You might have been there for 6 years, and you have long-standing relationships, friendships, business relationships with these guys. Maybe people in there owe you collectively $200. And, you know, you can't afford to be taken away from that and not receive that money you're owed. You know, it would just, you know, really mess you up. I mean, those things matter to inmates. They don't know where they're going to be placed. You may place me somewhere where I've never met any of these guys. They don't know me. We don't have any type of things set up. You know, I can't really, I don't have everything I need here. I don't have the give and take, the, you know, I help you, you help me relationships that I've been establishing for the past 6 years or whatever. You know, and that's really stressful, and really, you know, inmates don't want to go through that. They really don't. And so I think in most cases that would prevent an inmate from really making, you know, it a point to get something done about those bed bugs. They may just try to deal with it. Let's move on to story number 2. So first, let me show you the news report. It says, Fulton County Sheriff's Office is currently investigating a disturbing incident that occurred on May 17th, approximately 8:30 p.m. within the confines of the Rice Street Jail. I believe that is in Atlanta, Georgia. According to the initial incident report, inmate Kavian Thomas managed to dig a hole through a shower wall, providing him access to an adjacent cell block where he launched an attack on fellow inmate Derodney Russell. Russell sustained superficial stab wounds to his upper body and is currently receiving medical treatment within the facility's dedicated medical unit. Well, first thing that comes to mind, number one, I don't know if that picture of the hole in the wall is the real hole, or if that's just something this person got off Google just to go along, to have a visual with the story. But also from reading that, if they're just treating him within the actual jail's medical unit, then it probably wasn't very serious stab wounds or anything really life-threatening, because they would have taken him to the hospital. So that's good. At least it's not too serious. Now, let me get to this. I'm sure the first thing that comes to mind, or most people's mind, when they see this report and this story is, man, he must have spent weeks digging that tunnel. That's crazy. And I mean, didn't that inmate hear him digging? I mean, what's going on here? That's wild. Well, it's not really as it seems. You know, I know a lot of movies or TV shows come to mind, and you kind of picture this inmate with like a little spoon just chipping away for weeks and weeks and weeks, really putting some elbow grease in, working on this tunnel with his little utensil. It's actually a lot more simple than that as far as knocking holes through walls in prison. So they definitely don't use little spoons or even little shanks. You know, they don't use that, especially if we're talking a hole big enough for an inmate to fit through. You know, and I can attest to this because at my prison, it is nothing for holes to be all in the walls. I mean, there's prisons there where, I mean, everyone in the dorm kind of has an understanding. If you're on the cell on this side, you're going to knock a little fist-sized hole through the wall, and then I'll knock a fist-sized hole through this wall, and then so forth all the way down the line. So if anyone comes to shake your cell down, you pass your phone to me through the hole. I'll send it all the way down the line. If they go down there, they can send it back. I mean, they'll never find it. So all type of stuff like that. As far as how they actually knock these holes in the wall, you notice my natural reaction just now was to kind of go like that, because I'm picturing what they use, and it's usually going to be a big pole of some kind. I mean, this could be a metal chair leg from the chair they put in your cell. And it's like, well, how do they get those off the chair? They use a saw sometimes. Well, how do they get a saw? Well, I mean, we'll be here all day if we go down the line of how they just do. Okay. But also, and more common, like specifically, we have lockers in our cells in my prison, and there's like a built-in metal pole in one side of the locker that's supposed to be like a towel rack. So after you have your wet towel from the shower, you hang it up and it'll dry in there. They'll just rip it out, and now you got a pole. Sometimes it's a weapon, sometimes it's a battering ram. And then even stronger than that, you have these big pieces of rebar that are all in the ceilings, and they'll send some short guys up there to just kind of crawl up in these ceilings and get this rebar, just yank this rebar out of the ceiling. And it's like, well, how do they do that? Well, even if they don't have a saw, I mean, this is usually how most metal gets broken off, whether for shanks or for whatever purpose you're going to use this metal for. They'll take it. Of course, it's very sturdy. It's not just kind of snap off, but you kind of rock back and forth with it, kind of like you're rowing a canoe. You're just kind of really rocking, and at first it's not going to have much give, but you just got to, you'll be sweating. It's a workout, but you got to really put in that work. And as, I guess, the friction kind of heats it up at that place, that little point in it that you're trying to bend, it becomes more pliable as it becomes more hot. And then it gets a little more, you get a little more give, and then you get a little more and a little more. And now you're actually able to do this with it until it finally snaps off at the end. So it's very easy for them to do that. So they'll take these poles and just kind of really just batter it into this concrete. And at first it's hard, but once you really make a dent in it, this concrete kind of just starts chipping and crumbling and falling apart. And it's really easy. It may take them an hour to really get a fist-sized hole. So it might have taken this inmate, who knows? It might have taken several hours or even a day or two. So that's how he was able to do that, I'm sure. Just to kind of address some comments that I saw on this actual post when I first saw it. Why didn't the guy, he had all this time, I'm sure he heard him digging. Why didn't he say something? Why didn't he tell an officer? Well, we don't know. We don't know what the situation of the dorm or the cell block is, but I could assume if there's a guy who's willing to dig a tunnel just to get his hands on you, telling an officer, and at best he may move you to the cell block, right down the, right across from that cell block. I mean, what is he going to do? At best, if he was to move you to a different cell block, I would assume these guys are digging tunnels. I mean, they're probably gonna do anything they have to get their hands on you. And let me tell you, if they're determined to do it, it would only make it worse for you. If you were, for whatever reason he's trying to get to you, you're just gonna add snitching on him on top of that. It's probably not a good idea. And there's not always that's prison. That's jail. There's not always a logical, sensible escape plan from a bad situation, from a dangerous situation. You can't just call the police. You can't just, if you're out here, and someone's just really just stalking you and hunting you down, and like anywhere you go, they're looking for you, trying to get you, and maybe you're like, you know what? I am at my breaking point. Fine, you win. I am moving states. I mean, you can't go anywhere in prison. That's why it's, that's why it sucks in there. You're trapped with these guys. And that's just the reality. Sometimes you legitimately just have to stand there and brace yourself and hope that you make it through. And it seems this guy did, and it seems he will ultimately be just fine. Because again, if it was anything really serious, they would not just be taking him down to the nurse's office and putting a Band-Aid on it. He would be in the hospital. So there's that. Number 3, and the final story we're going to talk about. Instead of an intro, I'll just let this video that I'm going to show you speak for itself. I am going to have to mute it because it has music that I can't play on YouTube. So So as you can see, they're having a good Easter egg hunt in here, but instead of Easter eggs, they're using little baggies of contraband. I didn't put this part in the clip because I didn't want to show it on YouTube, but from what I saw, the bags have mostly either tobacco or marijuana in them. It's interesting because, no matter how you feel about inmates having contraband in prison, all that to the side, when I look at this, what it tells me is that currently in this cell block, there's a very good overall mood, a very good vibe, which is rare and it's always appreciated. And when you've been in those times where things are not good and everyone's not getting along and you just wake up and you feel the tension, even if you're not involved in any of it, man, it's just never good. You never know what's going to happen, and it kind of gives you this overall feeling of just dread when there are problems with groups among other groups and people among other people in this cell block, and it just affects the whole atmosphere, and for them to do this, just kind of, this one guy, number one, he must be rolling in money, because that is so much money, especially in prison. I mean, just the bags he was filling with contraband, I mean, that has to be thousands and thousands, maybe tens of thousands of dollars worth of stuff that he's just giving away for free. So number one, he's probably doing very well in there, but number two, there can't be any tension and real beef in this cell block. It's probably a very good atmosphere right now, and trust me, though, that goes in phases. You could be in the same cell block here for 5 years straight, and for a year and a half it's going to be fine, everyone gets along, and then for 2 years it could be deadly. There could be stabbings, all type of stuff, and then for another year it'll be fine, and then it'll change again. These things kind of go in waves. It depends on, there's always people moving in and out of a cell block, and it just kind of depends on who goes in there and who leaves and what happens in there. So you really learn to appreciate when there's an atmosphere like this where, everyone clearly gets along and is just okay with each other. And so one guy took it upon himself to, let me just do something nice for everybody. Let me just give away some stuff. Let's just have a fun little Easter egg hunt. That's what I see when I watch this. I think it's also a good point to make here is, I've personally never seen something like that in prison. We never had an Easter egg hunt of any kind, so even that to me is something new that I've never seen. But there's a lot of things I talk about, even if I have footage to back it up, and it's like I'll talk about some certain things that happen in prison or that I've seen, and some people just can't believe it. They have their own ideas formed about from what they've seen on TV and in movies, or maybe they went to prison for like a year, and because this never happened there, then they just, anything that didn't happen to them just never happened. Anything a little bit outlandish like this, or just like it's not what you hear every day when it comes to, prison activities, they just, there's no way, this is a bunch of baloney. Keep your mind open, folks, because I promise you, some wild stuff happens in prison. Okay, and this is evidence of it. So there's our 3 stories. I hope you enjoyed them. If you got some more, feel free to send them to me. I had one of these sent to me on Instagram from a guy, so I appreciate him. Thank you for that. But otherwise, make sure you subscribe if you haven't already, because I will be back very soon with another video.